that they fight for you, right? That's what a union does. Like, bargain. And that's what they claim to do. SAG-AFTRA is on your side when it comes to contracts, representatives, safety, diversity, you name it. So were they able to step up when actors and performers faced an existential threat? Maybe, but not for everyone. Picture yourself as a university student on November 2022. You have a dissertation to present next week, and ChatGPT just came out. This was revolutionary for any student. And while it was really cool to have an AI be able to write so much with such little prompts, things went from cool to concerning when Sora came out, capable of creating videos just from prompts. Immediately, there was a big concern, not just over all the things they stole to make this, but over the fact that greedy studio executives would probably see this as an opportunity to cut even more costs from already terrible Hollywood movies. And in 2023, that's exactly what happened. A Marvel show by the name of Secret Invasion, meant for Disney Plus, used AI for its opening credits sequence. Only AI, nothing else, just AI. It looked terrible. And that got people panicking. This was barely 1 year after ChatGPT. It clearly looked bad, but it was approved anyway. What else are studios willing to do now? This is when SAG-AFTRA and its biggest members decided to step up and fight for the average common actor's rights. In the summer of 2023, a vote was held over whether to strike or not, and the majority, more than 93% of SAG-AFTRA members, voted yes. So it was official. They were all ordered to strike, meaning that they couldn't work on any movies or series or even participate in any promotional material. And after 118 days of striking, they finally were able to reach a deal with the top studios in Hollywood for many different things, including compensation, residuals, and AI protections. There was only one small problem, though. This enormous victory, as SAG-AFTRA called it, only applied for people working in cinema or theater, or just Hollywood in general, but had nothing to do with the profession that is most vulnerable to the rise of artificial intelligence: voice acting. When I said that SAG-AFTRA represents everyone in entertainment, I meant it. They represent everyone. They're practically a monopoly. This includes anyone doing voiceover. We're talking voice actors for games, for anime, for just about anything. But let's not forget that video games also have actors, singers, dancers, stunt actors, motion capture artists, and a bunch of different performers under SAG-AFTRA. So technically speaking, all of these people were left behind during that strike in 2023. This was a very big problem because these performers were paying the same fees and dues as Hollywood actors and were in an industry that is way more likely to use AI compared to Hollywood, as evidenced by recent developments. This has gotten so problematic that layoffs have been increasing while AI initiatives have been getting more and more funding. It's gotten so unbearable that game developers are getting so fed up with their boss's obsession with AI. Now, for a while, people didn't really take these warnings very seriously. I mean, who actually thinks that AI can replace real developers, right? Well, recently we got a peek as to what the future could look like, and it's not looking good at all. On March 20th, 2025, Ark Survival Evolved released a trailer for an upcoming expansion. This is genuinely one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, look at this. This is really bad. It obviously was disliked, bombed. People hated it, but that's not really going to be enough of a reason for developers not to use AI. And while yes, this looks terrible and video generation still has a very long way to go before looking decent, voice-related AI tools are already worryingly very good. One quick Google search, and you can find many different websites, sometimes free, able to fully clone a voice, and the only thing they need is just a short audio clip of that person talking. Some of them are so good that the AI voice doesn't sound monotone, like it won't be talking like this. It'll be able to scream, sometimes even able to whisper, and sometimes even exhibit some form of emotion, depending on how good the audio sample you give it is. Many voice actors have been feeling existential for years now. Is this it? Are they even needed anymore now that AI has gotten so good? So seeing that SAG-AFTRA so heroically stood up to the dangers of AI for its actors in cinema, it only made sense for them to do the same thing for its voice actors and motion capture artists when it came to video games, since they represented them too, right? Well, it took them a little while, but in the summer of 2024, they finally decided to go on strike for video game performers. The SAG-AFTRA president said, "We're not going to consent to a contract that allows companies to abuse AI to the detriment of our members. Enough is enough. When these companies get serious about offering an agreement our members can live and work with, we will be here ready to negotiate." This strike is happening because after 2 years of negotiation, they couldn't reach an agreement with 10 video game studios in particular. The whole point of this strike is to not work for these companies in particular, and that is it. This isn't an industry-wide strike. It only affects Activision, Blindlight, Disney Character Voices, Electronic Arts Productions, Epic Games, Formosa Interactive, Insomniac Games, Take-Two Productions, VoiceWorks Productions, and Warner Bros. Games. That's it. Under union rules, you cannot work for any of these companies, but no one is stopping you from working for any other company. SAG-AFTRA didn't really frame it that way, though. They said, "We're fighting for our survival," and they made it seem like they were striking over the entire industry. This strike affects roughly 2,600 SAG-AFTRA members. And as I mentioned earlier, this wasn't just about voice actors, it was also about motion capture artists, stunt performers, singers, dancers, and it even prohibited people from participating in camera tests, rehearsals, auditions. It was a complete embargo on video game work for these developers. And you know what? It was really hard to find anyone opposing the strike online. It seemed like everyone was on these performers' sides. Yes, you deserve to be protected from AI. SAG-AFTRA claimed that the contract would also have better healthcare options and higher pay. Who would be opposed to that? People wanted to see them succeed. But we're in 2025 now, and after more than 200 days of striking, SAG-AFTRA says that they're nowhere near close in agreement with these affected studios, saying that the latest contracts proposed by them have alarming loopholes. SAG-AFTRA doubled down, saying that we have proposed a deal to these studios that includes wage increases of over 15% for SAG-AFTRA represented performers in video games, as well as enhanced health and safety protections, and industry-leading terms of use for AI digital replicas in-game and additional compensation for the use of an actor's performance in other games. But here's the thing, if you're a gamer, there's a good chance that you had no idea that the strike was happening to begin with. So, what gives? The whole point of the strike is to delay the games currently in development by the studios that are affected. So since Take-Two is involved, for example, GTA 6 is probably experiencing some delays with voice acting. But since it hasn't come out yet, you as a consumer haven't really felt the strike in any way. Unless, for whatever reason, you played Genshin Impact. You see, even though Genshin Impact's developer, Hoyoverse, is not part of the strike in any way, and has always been a non-union project, it's never been a union project, a big part of their voice acting talent for their English dub happens to be SAG-AFTRA members, and those voice actors have decided to strike the game. Unlike the other games being striked, this one is a live service game that has updates come out periodically with voiced quests. This means that ever since the strike, many of the patches coming out have had completely mute characters when you play with the English dub, and the players have been feeling it. So that's where things get kind of weird. In their FAQ section, they have this question here. I'm a SAG-AFTRA member, but I'm tempted to take a non-union job to make ends meet, like Genshin Impact. Why is that a bad thing? I'm just trying to earn a living. To which they answer, non-union work undercuts the union's ability to negotiate the best contracts possible for you. If non-union producers can hire the best in the business for next to nothing, they have no incentive to go union. Additionally, non-union work allows producers to pay less and avoid paying residuals and retirement benefits. It also subjects you to longer unpaid work hours and potentially hazardous working conditions. And when you work off the card and run into problems, the union can't help you because the project wasn't produced under the SAG-AFTRA contract. Working off the card not only contributes to the growth of non-union work, but it puts your membership in jeopardy. Under the union's Global Rule 1, members must work under contract. Consequences for working off the card range from fines to suspension to expulsion from the union. No, not only are you confused, I am too. How is it that the majority of voice actors on Genshin Impact, a non-union project, are SAG-AFTRA affiliated, which directly breaks this rule, but are also striking even though the game isn't part of the strike? It makes absolutely no sense. You know what else doesn't make sense? Around 6 months before the video game strike, SAG-AFTRA signed a deal with a voiceover studio for AI use in video games. This article from Variety says, the company sells AI voices to video game developers from its library of ethically licensed voices. Last year, the company announced a new iteration of smart NPCs, non-playable characters that could use OpenAI or other language models to interact with video game players. This deal pertains only to digital replicas, using AI to recreate the voice of a real performer, living or dead. This obviously divided the hell out of voice actors in SAG-AFTRA. It's like, what, like, you just did a strike for actors for like over 100 days, and now you're signing this, and you haven't even covered video game actors yet? Weird. I think disappointment is the first word that comes to mind with both announcements. Amber Warnock Estrada, a video game journalist and aspiring voice actor, said, "We were all just like, what was the point of the strikes?" Marcus Rothenberg, a full-time voice actor, echoed the same disappointment. "The union didn't consult their members," Rothenberg said. "I know people that had never heard anything about this until the deal went through." You know what else is interesting? For Genshin Impact specifically, Hoyoverse uses a studio established in the US by the name of Psy. That means that they don't hire voice actors directly, they hire a studio that gets them actors on their behalf. Psy also happens to have very strict AI protections in their contract. So, what are the voice actors striking exactly against Genshin? No one really knew, and no one really bothered to research. Look, this is the Genshin Impact subreddit, in which someone posted an update on the strikes. Look at the top comment. Nice. Hopefully the negotiations are swift and in actors' favor. Even though the game they were playing was practically voiceless, right? They saw the voice actors voicing some of their favorite characters go on strike for their rights against AI, and they supported them fully. If there was any frustration from the players, it was actually towards Hoyoverse. Why the hell don't they sign the contract? Why is it so hard for them to give voice actors the rights that they deserve and protection against AI? This was the attitude that most of the community was exhibiting, and everyone was mostly hoping for a peaceful resolution until people started getting fired. Zenless Zone Zero is a game made by the same developer of Genshin Impact. One of the characters of this game is Von Licaon. He's really fun to play and was definitely made to appeal to the very rich furries. Ever since release, his voice actor was Nicholas Thurkettle, and the community loved him. However, in early 2025, his dialogue in new patches would end up being unvoiced. You see, the strikes against Genshin Impact weren't the only ones. Every Hoyoverse game was affected, including Zenless Zone Zero. So people assumed Nicholas was just participating in the strikes like everyone else. But on March 12th, 2025, he tweeted this out, saying, "Proxies," which is the name of the player in Zenless Zone Zero. "I'm learning about this as you are, and I share your shock. Neither Hoyoverse nor Sound Cadence, which is the studio that Hoyoverse hired specifically for Zenless Zone Zero, has communicated with me since October. I've been fully available and recorded multiple voice jobs in that time. I'm trying to learn more and absorb this news." On March 12th, 2025, Nicholas, as well as the community, found out that he was recasted. Another voice actor had effectively replaced him as Von Licaon, shocking the entire community. A bit over an hour later, another voice actress by the name of Emery Chase had this to say, "Hey Proxies, I was replaced as Soldier 11, another character in Zenless Zone Zero, because I am unwilling to perform work not covered by a SAG interim agreement during a strike for AI protections, the outcome of which will determine the future of our industry. Any other theories that pop up are incorrect. I'd like to clarify that there's a difference between being struck and not being on an interim agreement. Union projects that began work prior to the strike and non-union projects are not struck, but they also do not offer the union-enforced AI rights we are fighting for. Many actors are choosing to voluntarily withhold work on these categories of projects because we feel it is the best way to support the union's fight for the protections that are critical to our continued ability to create the art we love. I knew that by withholding work, it was possible I'd be replaced, though of course I hoped they would choose to leave her silent until I was able to return. I found out the role was recast today alongside all of you. I loved working on Zenless Zone Zero and would have been thrilled to return to the project post-strike or with an interim agreement, but I stand by my choices regardless of the outcome. All my best wishes to the cast and the production team. Thank you for a great ride, Proxies." So there you have it. Even though Hoyoverse is not part of the official SAG-AFTRA strike, Emery, as well as many other actors who are SAG-AFTRA and working for Hoyoverse, decided to strike independently from their union in solidarity with the actual strike. This was all in an effort to make Hoyoverse sign the agreement, even though they technically weren't part of the actual strike. Nicholas Thurkettle quote-tweeted Emery's tweet and said, "This is what I've been quiet about. I'm not SAG, but what game companies want to do with AI is an existential threat. I took a personal stand to ask for protection and had to be willing to give up the best thing that's ever happened in my professional life. I stand by my choice. But this kind of didn't really make sense in regards to his first tweet. Someone replied with, "So you were aware that they did reach out to you regarding returning to the role and you turned it down knowing you could potentially be recasted for this choice, and then went off to Twitter to say they never reached out to you since October?" Things weren't really making much sense, but at the same time, people were still on the voice actor's side. I mean, they were claiming that they were fighting for their own existence. If they don't do this, AI will replace them fully, so they were excused for the sake of the bigger picture. These tweets made the actual studio, Sound Cadence, have to make some sort of a statement because a lot of theories were running rampant. This is what they had to say. From top to bottom, Sound Cadence Studios is a community of artists. As concerns have been raised regarding how we work with our voice actors, we wanted to take this opportunity to clarify where we stand and how we operate. Every contract at our studio features explicit AI protections regardless of union status. Much of our staff are actors themselves and could not, in good conscience, offer other performers work we would not be willing to take. The decision to recast talent on any project is not made lightly. While sometimes our hands are tied as to what we can communicate and when, we understand how personally actors take their roles, and always want to ensure that no one is ever blindsided. Our studio has and will continue to honor legacy casting on all projects we've inherited whenever possible, and always reach out to actors to reprise their roles before investigating any other options. We respect the decisions of all actors in navigating the ongoing strike and fully support SAG-AFTRA and its AI negotiations. The passion of fan communities for video game characters and the people who bring them to life is further evidence that real human actors matter, and we will continue to bring voices to our clients' projects in the most human way possible. Look, things became even more confusing with the statement because they said, "We'll always reach out to actors to reprise their roles before investigating any other options." But Nicholas claimed that he wasn't contacted for over 4 months. Additionally, Emery claims that she was doing this for AI protections, but they're already present in the Sound Cadence contract. She then specified that she only wants to work on a project that has an interim agreement, so a SAG-AFTRA contract. But she was working on this game before the strike, which meant that she was a union member working a non-union project, which is against SAG-AFTRA's policies. Does a single thing here make sense? No. But again, it didn't matter. People were still siding with the voice actors because this was the voice actor fighting against evil corporations and AI. They were always given the benefit of the doubt. Until one day, all of the goodwill they had from all the community would come crashing down on their faces. Kinich is a Genshin Impact character available in its newest region. At some point, much like many other characters in Genshin Impact, his English dub would go silent, and people had correctly assumed that much like all the other actors, his actor was also on a SAG-AFTRA strike. But then, that voice actor, John Patnaud, posted this statement on March 26, 2025, saying, "Hey everyone, if you've been playing the latest 5.5 update in Genshin Impact and are hearing Kinich speak for the first time in 6 months, it's not my voice, I've been recast. I've been withholding voiceover services during the SAG-AFTRA interactive strike because Hoyoverse wouldn't offer AI protections in the form of a SAG interim agreement. They'd kept my character's dialogue silent for months, all the while I had made the difficult decision to continue not going in until an interim agreement was signed, and this was ultimately why I was recast. Now, obviously, a recast is not what I wanted. I'd hoped that any progress behind the scenes would be made and I would come back safely, or that if recast auditions went out, my colleagues wouldn't read for them. Unfortunately, I was wrong. I absolutely adored playing Kinich. Genshin was my comfort game during the early parts of the pandemic, and it was a dream of mine to book a playable character. At the time, I didn't have an agent, didn't live in LA, or had any connections that would get me close, but 4 years later, I did it, and the messages I've received from you all saying how much my performance as Kinich meant to you made my heart swell. I would and can return if Foyo invites me back and signs an interim. I stand by my choice regardless of the outcome. Also, the strike is still ongoing. Please don't believe this information on the internet. My best wishes to the cast and the production team. Thank you for everything, JP." This came as an absolute shock to the entire community, because here there wasn't some weird conflicting story. This was John saying, "Hey guys, I'm striking and I was directly recast because of that strike." Genshin is also a bigger game than Zelda Zone Zero, so of course the stakes were high. I also want to point out that getting an English dub role in Genshin Impact is actually a huge deal. Due to the massive popularity that this game gained during the pandemic, they were one of the main beneficiaries of its popularity. This allowed them to grow their social media followings substantially, allowing them to land more roles. It was a major stepping stone in the industry. So getting a role here, as well as losing it, is a very big deal. But typically, when someone gets recasted in a controversial way, like with what happened with Emery, the replacement keeps it secret, at least for a while. This time, though, it wasn't silent at all, and it created total chaos. On the same day, the voice actor Jacob Takanashi would post this on Twitter, saying, "Role announcement. I'm honored to join the English cast of Genshin Impact as the voice of Kinnich. Taking up the mantle of Malippo is a privilege, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to carry the flame from the previous flame bearer, John, who did an incredible job. Those are big shoes to fill, and I promise to give it my all out of respect for him, for Hoyoverse, and for you, the fans. Thank you to Diana for their amazing direction and for helping me navigate the intricacies of this incredible game, and to Side Tokyo and Hoyoverse for the honor of bringing Kinnich to life. I'm deeply grateful for the privilege of entertaining you all." Now, yeah, you're probably expecting the Genshin community to be divided on this, with some people completely shitting on Jacob and others supporting him. What no one was expecting, though, is that the voice actors themselves would join in on this shit show and publicly attack Jacob for taking on this role. There was only one voice actor with something positive to say. That was Nathan Noakes, saying, "Welcome to the team, Jacob." Every other voice actor in these replies had something negative to say about this. Here are some comments from many voice actors, not just for Genshin Impact. Like, there are many reasons why roles get recast. I personally draw the line with the original actors holding out because they are fighting for better work conditions. I have refused many auditions to take over roles from my peers because I'd never do that to another fellow actor. This was Jacob being publicly called out by a very well-renowned English dub voice actress, but she was far from being the only one. Kaylee Mills, the voice actress behind Keqing in Genshin Impact, someone who greatly benefited from the explosion in popularity the game went through during the pandemic, had this to say: "This is actually kinda diabolical. If you need the money, at least take the role uncredited. This just comes off as an easy grab for clout. It's not a good look." This is another Genshin voice actor replying with 3 thumbs down. And then you had the voice actor behind one of the most recognizable characters in the entirety of Genshin Impact, Paimon, who's literally the mascot of the game, say, "This wasn't a passing of the torch." And even going as far to say that there is a huge difference when you take the role of an actor who is striking for AI protections. You are no castmate of mine. Now, these voice actors making these aggressive public statements probably thought that they were on top of the world, convinced that not only are they on the right side of history, but because they're on the right side of history, everything they say will be taken positively by the community. And you know what? Maybe in another world, it would have been the case. It just so happens, though, that they're using a platform that has something called community notes, and that's exactly what happened to Corinna, inadvertently triggering one of the biggest reputational catastrophes you could ever imagine. Here's what the community note said. It should be noted that despite bullying another voice actor while using SAG-AFTRA as an excuse, Corinna themselves isn't on strike, even though they're American-based and the voice actor they're harassing isn't. Whoa, that's a lot to take in. People started taking a step back and thinking, wait, that's actually true. The strike has been ongoing for 8 months, and yet every single patch that comes out, Paimon is probably the only character that's still voiced. Corinna was starting to deal with an ever-growing backlash, but that didn't discourage other voice actors from tweeting passive-aggressive tweets towards Jacob. This would contribute to negatively impacting public perception even further. Here are some examples. This voice actor said, "I normally try to be pretty professional on here, but if you don't like me speaking out against actors scabbing and taking roles, kindly fuck off. I'm not going to be silenced just because you don't care about us getting ripped off and abused by these companies." A scab is a union term that Jacob was called multiple times by other voice actors. It means someone who doesn't strike and continues to work. The voice actors of Sucrose from Genshin, as well as Venture from Overwatch, had this to say: "It's insane how entitled the gacha fanbase is, holy shit, keeping the characters hostage from us and hurting our experience. What? We're fighting for workers' rights. That's what a strike is all about. If this was the 1940s and we were striking, it would be based or some shit. I have no interest in arguing with people who'd rather see integrity replaced by scabs or AI. That's not what video games are all about. It's an art form comprised of so many beautiful artists doing their best, not about the money or fame or AI. I'm grateful that the projects I'm still working on offer humane protections and livable wages, and fan bases that aren't insane and appreciate real integral voices. Also, I know this isn't all gacha fans, but the replies to some of my fellows are horrendous. Some people pointed out that Jacob wasn't even in the US, he was based in Japan, saying, "You guys outright attacked the voice actor for being a scab when he's Japan-based, and the strike and union don't even exist there." If you didn't know, SAG-AFTRA is American. If you're based outside the US, you can't join SAG-AFTRA. Here's what Valeria had to say. What's disgusting is y'all writing this hard for a scab. He's an English voice actor. He can still scab even if he's based in a different country. I don't know if anyone told you, but audio transcends borders. He knowingly took work from someone else. The voice actress for Hu Tao from Genshin Impact, as well as some other big roles in anime, quote tweeted John's statement and said, "Thank you for standing strong and holding the line with us. You're a real one." And then replied with, "Clears throat, some of us shaking my f***ing head," referring to Jacob. This voice actor tweeted, "Say, are you Japanese or Japanese American, able to portray a 20s male character, can sing, have an excellent home studio? I've got a couple of colleagues in mind, but I would like to know more voice actors, except that one guy. Please DM me your website. Thank you." Of course, he was referring to Jacob. The voice actor for either the male main character of Genshin Impact had this to say. Wow, on the day this happened. Now here's where the crisis really deepens for all these voice actors that made these public statements. Nathan Notes, the only voice actor that was nice to Jacob when he announced his new role, said, "Right, I spoke to the new voice actor who lives and works in Japan, and he didn't even know what was going on. He came into an onslaught of criticism and didn't know anything about the strike or SAG, since SAG isn't in Japan. Blows my mind." At that point, it was very hard to side with these voice actors that were dogpiling Jacob. The guy had no idea, and instead of reaching out to him, private messaging him, talking to him one-on-one personally, they chose to make a vicious example of him in public. As this was all going on, Corinna was too busy fighting a battle all alone, trying to prove to everyone that even though voicing a character like Paimon during a strike is scabbing, is justified. But not for Jacob, only for Corinna. This was Corinna's response to a fan pointing out the hypocrisy. "No, you're right. I'm technically scabbing. I originally have this role, and technically I can still work this role. I am a disabled person, and this is the job that puts food on my table as I actually record this role year-round. But I didn't take this role from another person who is striking. I had this role, and I am stuck in it because I have no other way to pay for my medical bills. But yes, technically I am a scab, and you're right. I don't deserve any praise right now. I don't deserve any of it. I deserve to be told off just like this actor, so please do." "No one should look up to me. I'm trapped and a coward because I continue this job, because if not I end up homeless. I don't say that because I deserve sympathy. I don't. The ones sticking to the picket line deserve all of the praise, not me. I love voicing Paimon. Love it. I have been through so much that you guys will never truly understand, but I also know what I am, and I should not be given any applause for this. If I could feasibly stick the line with my fellow actors, I would. This job actually barely keeps me alive. But that doesn't mean that it makes it different. It is not a good thing to my fellow actor that I continue to work on this game. I have struggled with that since the strike started, so call me out for this. Please, I deserve it. If it means we get closer to making things better, then so be it." So Corinna was arguing that the reason why Paimon is still voiced in Genshin during a strike is that so they don't end up homeless? Isn't that why everyone works a job to begin with? I mean, isn't that... I'm sorry, like, how does you being disabled have anything to do with this? Someone pointed out, so what? Many disabled people work remotely in other professions. Voice acting is not your only option if it puts you in such an unethical position. But you have to seek attention on Twitter.com like a 16-year-old and present yourself like a saint of the whole community. To which Corinna replies with, "I definitely don't present myself as a saint, but you don't know my disability and what I am able to do." This person said, "I'm very convinced that you keep voicing Paimon because while people are unhappy that characters they love are unvoiced, like 90% of the player base would actually f***ing cheer if Paimon was fucking silent."
Hi, Dan.
That's so true. Look, if you haven't played Genshin, you have to understand. Paimon works as the mouthpiece of the main character. If she's not voiced, the game would actually be hurt beyond recognition. And to recast Corinna would be a nightmare because there are hundreds of thousands of lines to re-record from the beginning of the game until now. If anyone is gonna convince Hoyoverse to sign this agreement,
Good.
it would be Corinna striking. But there you are, the most important role is still being voiced during a strike. How can you take any of this seriously? This is like when players tried to boycott Genshin by continuing to play the game every single day. Like, come on, dude. To be fair, Corinna did receive backup from Keqing's voice actor, Kaylee Mills. Unfortunately, though, this only ended up making them look worse because Kaylee was literally pocket-watching Jacob's finances, saying this is one small job for him, not his full-time work. It's Corinna's bread and butter. He's done very little voiceover work, so it isn't what he's relying on to pay the bills. For all we know, his wife's the breadwinner. Either way, they bought a house recently, so I doubt it was a necessary job for survival. I think it's safe to say that I'm not the only one who gets a bad taste in their mouth when they read something like this, right? Not to mention that Kaylee very conveniently didn't mention that Jacob has children. He has a family to take care of. So how is it any different from her friend Corinna, who'd be homeless if it wasn't for Paimon's voice acting work? The fact that he bought a house? There's something called a mortgage. And regardless, delving into someone's personal finances like this is unprofessional in any industry, period. They were trying their hardest to paint Jacob as the supervillain. Some fans joined in on this too, failing miserably. Here's someone siding with the voice actors trying to paint Jacob as a liar that knew about the strikes even though he said that he didn't. Showing a tweet he had made in 2023 saying that if companies used AI for a commercial, then he's just going to assume that the product is subpar. That's because he believes that if they can't afford to pay for real, authentic voice actors, then they also can't pay for quality assurance, research and development, and supply chains. This was community noted, and the message is, SAG-AFTRA video game strike didn't start until July of 2024, so unless he can time travel, it's impossible for him to have been talking about the SAG-AFTRA strike way before it even happened. Also, generally being against AI usage is not conducive to being proof of being aware that SAG-AFTRA is on strike. As time went on, Jacob was being loved more and more by the community, while the other voice actors that stood against him were being gradually hated. And that's when they would try to play the victims. The voice actress for Hu Tao from Genshin tweeted this out a couple days later, saying the harassment and bullying over the past day plus has been really unwarranted to say the least. Some of y'all need a lot of help, and now this pure evil. So Brianna unfortunately tragically lost her little sister at some point in time, and this is someone emailing her with the username Brianna Dead Little Sister, saying that they hope that she wants in help. Bear in mind, there's worse things in this email that I cannot show at all because of YouTube, but you get the point. This is very, very inappropriate. The voice actor June, who had made a tweet purposefully blacklisting Jacob from a role, said, "Genuinely, sincerely, I hope you find help. I really mean it. Troll behavior on Twitter is one thing, but sending direct emails is something else. It often points to a pain that's deeper inside the person. Whatever that may be, Kira, I hope you find help that heals that pain." And it's an email that says that he should end it all, but with more direct language. Also specifying that all other voice actors who also criticized Jacob should do the same thing. Corinna received the same exact email and said, "Guys, don't worry, my white blood cells are already trying to do that. It's just a matter of time. Be patient. Hashtag autoimmune." Another voice actor would receive the same exact message, again from Kira. I don't know who Kira is, bro, but hey, you gotta chill. The post said, "Love the community. Someone named Koro Kira thought this was the appropriate thing to send me this afternoon." This prompted Jacob to quote tweet this tweet saying, "Hey, I know tensions are high, but don't fucking do this, Jesus. If you send threats to anyone on my behalf, too far, man. Too far. Sorry you had this happen to you, Kiba." And now I'm seeing it wasn't just Kiba. Come on, guys, way too far. Suicide and threats? No. Just no. Knock it off. Someone replied to Jacob's post saying, "With respect, tensions would decrease significantly if you recognized and spoke publicly on the fact that voice actors aren't bullying you. If you truly didn't know about the strike, say so. If you did, say so. But voice actors are going to keep getting attacked until then." I shouldn't tell you that this was extremely controversial to say since it has 681 replies. But at this point, it was very safe to say people were tired of any voice actor that had something bad to say about Jake. Kiba, the same person that had received that email, had posted a reply on the initial Kinich post. Someone had said, "Can we collectively please stop harassing this man? The amount of unprofessionalism from voice actors under this post is just chilling. Why choose to bully someone you don't even know when you can let John and Jacob work this out on their own? Twitter warrior culture is disgusting." Kiba then said, "Please stop using the words bullying and harassment so freely. It is very obvious you don't fully understand why we are upset. It's called scabbing. End of story. It is bad regardless. If this were a different situation outside of a strike, which does affect everyone, it'd be different." A couple days later, Kiba would tweet this: "Getting followed just so people can shit on me is an encapsulation of how it feels to be a person of color and queer in this industry. To be honest, it's quite fascinating." Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. This is purely happening because of your skin color and your orientation. 100%. Obviously. Things were looking really bad, okay? The community that had supported these voice actors on their strike for months was now turning against them very violently and very quickly. This was the time to take a step back and reevaluate how to approach things, because clearly everyone was being harassed in some shape or form. But then SAG-AFTRA decides to step in personally and make things 1,000 times worse, opening up a can of worms in regards to the entire strike and their role as a union. On March 26th, a voice actor by the name of Aneris on Twitter had this to say. Hey, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and Zenless Zone Zero. We English voice actors would love to get back to work. I know the fans miss hearing their favorite characters and we miss voicing them. Please negotiate with SAG-AFTRA and sign the interim agreement to have us come back. What no one was expecting, though, is that SAG-AFTRA would quote tweet this and say what Aneris said. Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, tagging all three of the biggest Hoyoverse games, right? And then saying, we'll make it easy for you. Here's a link to our interactive/video game media agreements. Let's talk soon, wink face emoji. Now look, this was a big deal, alright? SAG-AFTRA is negotiating with many studios behind closed doors, but this was the first time they publicly called out someone like this. It almost seemed like they were trying to use public pressure to make Hoyoverse resume talks with them. Now, I'm sure whoever tweeted this out thought that they were a genius in the moment, but guys, whoever is running this account has probably been fired, because this tweet alone has probably caused incalculable PR damage to SAG-AFTRA and this entire strike. Because on the next day, they got community noted, and it was extremely significant.
Batman!
This agreement has severe limitations on how Hoyoverse can work with non-union voice actors, including a lifetime time limit for the voice actor, and eventually forcing the voice actor to either join the union, which has large entry costs and fees, or stop working on the project, linking SAG-AFTRA's own website twice as the source for these claims. The first link is what we already looked at, showing how much it costs to join, $3,000 and a bunch of other fees to stay in. The second link actually included the SAG-AFTRA Independent Interactive Localization Agreement. This is what SAG-AFTRA was presenting to studios in order for them to sign it. It's 65 pages long, but what people were focusing on was Section 6 under Article 1, titled Union Security. It said, employer will only employ performers covered by this agreement who are members of SAG-AFTRA in good standing, or those who shall make application for membership on the 30th day following the beginning of employment, and thereafter maintain such membership in good standing as a condition of employment. Nothing in this agreement will be construed as preventing employer from hiring non-SAG-AFTRA members in accordance with the Taft-Hartley Act to perform an interactive programs. We'll get back to what this means later. But for now, they continue, employer shall pay to SAG-AFTRA as liquidated damages the sum of $500 for each breach by the employer of the provisions of this section. Any breach of this section is subject to arbitration. Each time the employer hires a performer in violation of this section, it shall be considered a separate breach irrespective of the number of days of employment. It is the employer's responsibility to ascertain if each performer is a member of SAG-AFTRA in good standing. Employers shall provide SAG-AFTRA the names of performers to be used in the production of interactive material no later than the time of hiring or 48 hours in advance of the initial sessions, whichever is later. SAG-AFTRA, making this tweet, thinking that they were going to publicly pressure Hoyoverse to talk with them, ended up backfiring because now people were reading the agreement in depth when they didn't even bother to do so before. As I already mentioned, they were in full support of voice actors and the strike because they thought it was purely just about AI rights. And after seeing this, they started not just questioning the strike and the voice actors themselves with their behavior, but SAG-AFTRA as a union. At the same time, the Chinese community of Genshin Impact caught wind of this, and they were just as confused as everyone else, with one user explaining in detail that Hoyoverse, as a Chinese company, was already under strict anti-AI rules in China. Article 1023 of the Civil Code explicitly protects voice rights by referencing the protections for portrait rights. Unauthorized use of a person's voice, including highly similar AI-generated voices, constitutes infringement. If an AI-synthesized voice has identifiable characteristics like tone, intonation, or speech patterns that can be linked to a specific individual, it may still be deemed a violation of personality rights even if the original recording was not directly used. This law even covers using voices in different languages. The same Chinese user argued that if Hoyoverse were to sign the SAG-AFTRA agreement, they would face trouble in China because you can't join different unions as a Chinese company. You're already part of the All-China Federation of Trade Unions. This left people with more questions than answers. But at the same time, some others pointed out that, well, this is not true because Marvel Rivals actually signed the interim agreement, even though it was a game developed by NetEase, which is a massive Chinese corporation. In this case, though, it turned out to be unique because NetEase weren't the only ones in this. They were obviously collaborating with Marvel, a massive American company. And since Marvel already employs a huge amount of SAG-AFTRA voice actors and performers, it only made sense that they would sign it, but not as NetEase, the Chinese entity. It was Marvel, the American entity, that signed it on behalf of NetEase, who developed the game for them. So SAG-AFTRA and the voice actors were making this out to be like, oh yeah, you can just sign it. Just sign the agreement, bro. It's very simple, but it's actually way more complex than they made it out to be. As confusion was running absolutely rampant, Koi Dao, the voice of Albedo in Genshin Impact, decided to use the huge following he garnered during Genshin's explosion during the pandemic to clear confusion about the strike. Around the time Von Licaon and Soldier 11's voice actors were let go from South Cadence, he made a little thread clearing some things up, saying, if you're just learning about the video game strike, I want to clarify a key detail I've seen get distorted a lot. Generally, the developer decides whether to sign an interim agreement, not the recording studio. Often, the studio is only a middleman. They do not set this term. A recording studio may offer AI protections in its own contract with the actor, but this ultimately means very little because the developer owns the final recordings, not the recording studio. They cannot dictate how the developer uses that audio. If the developer does violate the AI protection clauses in that contract, then the burden of enforcement would be on the actor. Often, that means one guy having to lawyer up against a multi-million/billion-dollar company. This is what we mean by enforceable AI protections, because while we are deeply grateful for any recording studio's personal support in the strike, the fact remains they do not have the power or resources to protect us or meaningfully enforce any AI clauses in their contracts. Currently, only a SAG interim agreement can effectively do that, as it would be backed by the union's legal resources and can meet any violation by a big company on the appropriate scale. That's why actors are holding the line and why outrage at a recording studio ain't no. So this did clarify a couple of things, why the interim agreement is so important, because it means that the union will back you up legally if problems arise. But on March 12th, when this post was made, people were already on the side of voice actors. When things started shifting, though, he made another post after SAG-AFTRA's disaster of a quote tweet, saying, taps the sign with incomprehensible force. Any video game can bring back their full voice cast immediately during the strike. Once they agree to enforceable AI protections via a SAG interim agreement, and the game can still keep its non-union actors after doing so. This is not a union actor versus non-union actor conflict. The goal of the strike is to ensure that this craft isn't lost to AI. We've got a common goal, which is why so many non-union actors are holding the line alongside their union castmates, despite having no obligation to do so. Non-union actors are among those getting recast across the industry right now because they were holding out for enforceable AI protections. They understood that without these protections, the job disappears for all voice actors, and I desperately don't want their sacrifices to be in vain. But again, this post's problem is that it doesn't answer the main questions. Why is it that the union security clause sounds so weird in the contract? Why does it seem like this is targeting non-union voice actors, forcing them to join after 30 days? Some people were starting to have doubts that this was very simple. Like this person saying, I'm just a dude on the internet, and it's not that I don't believe you, it's that I've been around on the internet to know nothing is that simple. There's always some bullshit you or whoever can't get into otherwise. Why isn't it being done already? Koi replies with, hey, fortunately, with regards to this specific matter, it is that simple. Agree to enforceable AI protections and the voice actors can return. Over 150 games so far have signed on to the interim and were able to bring back their casts. It's happening right in front of our eyes. But we saw it with our own eyes, right? How there's 65 pages to this contract and there's only 12 mentions of artificial intelligence. 12! On 65 pages. What are the other pages for? And why does it seem like non-union actors get screwed over with this deal? Someone asked, where's your source that they can still keep non-union actors? Every other agreement made suggests otherwise. Koi replies with, the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947 by law prohibits all labor unions, including SAG-AFTRA, from unilaterally barring non-union workers from union jobs. If a production wants to keep/hire a non-union actor, all they have to do is fill out a one-page form for that actor. Well, wait a second. I mean, if all you had to do was just fill up one page and keep working as a non-union actor, then I guess signing this contract is as simple as Koi is saying, right? Unfortunately, though, people were right to doubt this. Nothing is ever that simple. And for you to understand that, you need to understand what the hell a Taft-Hartley Act even is. Look, after the Wagner Act in 1935, unions were not only allowed to exist legally, but they also gained a ridiculous amount of influence. After World War II, they organized countrywide strikes that severely hurt the economy. In 1945 alone, almost 400,000 workers from different industries striked, and in 1946, over 1 million from different industries striked as well. Not to mention that things like union shops were becoming too prevalent. The government was slowly becoming more and more anti-union, and in 1947, they revised the Wagner Act with the Taft-Hartley Act. This made it illegal to have a union shop of any kind and prohibited certain types of strikes, like wildcat strikes, which is when unionized workers strike without the approval of their management. One of the most important aspects of this act was to give workers back some of the power that the unions had taken away from them. They could, for example, leave a union immediately without consequences. Before this act, they would have to give a 30-day notice, and if a strike was ongoing, they weren't allowed to work. But more importantly, this act allowed states to enact right-to-work laws. This gave workers the freedom to choose whether or not to join a union in their workplace. It's complete freedom. But you might be wondering, why is this necessary if union shops were made illegal? Well, it gets a bit complicated. There are currently only 26 out of the 50 American states that have right-to-work laws. This means that I can join any industry without ever, and I mean ever, having to join any kind of union, period. But if a state has no right-to-work law, then they must follow the Taft-Hartley Act, which states that if you were to join an industry that has a union contract, you have to join that union after 30 days. Again, if you're European, you must be very confused right now. I am too. But as you can very clearly see on this map, California is not a right-to-work state. And according to SAG-AFTRA's own website, this is what the process looks like if you want to hire a non-union actor. First, you have to submit compliance documentation. The Taft-Hartley form is required by producers who intend to hire non-union actors under specific conditions. The form must explain why a non-union member should be hired over union talent. This can include actors having special skills, they are famous, have certain physical appearances, among other qualifications. The union will review each Taft-Hartley form and decide whether the non-union actor meets the criteria to be eligible. 2. 30-day window. Once the non-union actor is approved to be hired under the Taft-Hartley form, they have 30 days to work on the union project without being required to join SAG-AFTRA. And then 3 talks about union eligibility. But one thing's for certain, when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wait, this kind of just sounds like a union shop with extra steps. You're forced to join the union. Not to mention that this compliance documentation step makes things more complicated. I mean, seriously, reviewing every single form individually and deciding on whether you can hire them or not? You want to know what's even better? On SAG-AFTRA's own website, in their FAQ section about this, they have a question titled, "How long does it take to process a Taft-Hartley report?" Their answer is, "Due to the high volume of new media productions, please allow at least 6 to 8 weeks for principal Taft-Hartley reports to be processed. Please note, Taft-Hartley reports will not be processed until all final production paperwork has been submitted. This paperwork includes the cast clearance report, performance contracts, and final castings." What is this, man? Am I applying for a visa? Slowly but surely, you start to understand why Hoyoverse would not be interested in this. They're hiring studios with AI protections to find voice actors on their behalf. Why would you subject yourself to such bureaucracy? So if I tell you right now that more than 80% of voice acting gigs use a non-union contract, would you be really surprised? But technically, as a union member, you're not really allowed to work these non-union jobs. So what's the alternative? How do you avoid SAG-AFTRA's wrath? Well, you become something called FICOR. This means that you can work on non-union jobs even if a strike is ongoing. You still pay the dues to SAG-AFTRA, but you can't claim any other benefits. As an added bonus, SAG-AFTRA actually calls you a scab if you're FICOR. Financial Corps members are viewed as scabs or anti-union by SAG-AFTRA members, directors, and writers, most of whom also belong to entertainment unions. By the way, this entire page about FICOR on SAG-AFTRA is literally just begging you not to do it, okay? It's like, please. Like, you are losing this is the worst decision of your life. And you know why? That's because once you turn FICOR, you're essentially exiling yourself from SAG-AFTRA. It is extremely hard to join again. The more people kept digging about how SAG-AFTRA works, how the Taft-Hartley works, and how complex all these terms are, the more they became disgusted with SAG-AFTRA and the strike and the voice actors acting entitled on Twitter. Coy understood this and tried his best to answer these questions that people were asking all over social media to the best of his ability. He does specify that a Taft-Hartley can be extended 3 times, up to 90 days. He then answers a question that says, but it sounds like the Taft-Hartley process can be exhausted and that actor will have to join eventually. To which Hoy confirms, correct. Under normal circumstances, after the 3rd 30-day period, the actor is required to join if they wish to continue working on union projects. However, with the ongoing strike, the SAG negotiating committee has publicly stated that they want to help non-union actors keep their jobs and eliminate whatever complications they can to that end. As such, they are able to negotiate a waiver for the must-join rule. This would be granted on a case-by-case basis, and the details of such a waiver would be determined in negotiations between the production and the SAG negotiating committee. The next question is, the production has to negotiate, so it's not a guarantee? I don't like that. To which Coy responds, bro, I promise they're not going to flip a coin to decide whether or not to grant the waiver. Negotiations are necessary, if only to make sure neither party is conditioning their commitment on some kind of loophole that undermines the other. And with the existential threat of AI, it is very much in the union's interest to grant these waivers wherever they can to get productions to agree to AI protections. So again, guys, this is all for AI. No matter what, this is all for AI protections. Even though it's only mentioned 12 times in the interim agreement, this is the true goal. One question says, I'm still not comfortable with this requirement to join. Sounds like a big organization bullying the little guy. To which Coy responds, I understand how this whole situation can give off that impression, and it's worsened by all the misinformation and anti-union propaganda out there. SAG-AFTRA is not a corporation. It is a non-profit labor union, albeit one comprised of very annoying theater kids, but a union nonetheless. Its sole purpose is to ensure the health and safety of actors and to protect them from exploitation, which, along with the health insurance plans and on-set emergency staff, are funded by membership dues. That's why there's a limit to the Taft-Hartley process. If there were no requirement to join, nobody would join, and those protections would become financially unsustainable. He ends this with a question that says, this is still a lot of maybes. Why should I believe you? You sound like a union shill. To which he replies with, my dude, I totally understand that none of this is close to perfect, and I am not a union fanatic by any means. There are multiple documented instances of me publicly calling out the union leadership, but if AI eliminates this job, then it won't matter how any voice actor feels about the union. Video game voice acting will be a thing of the past. I want to make sure this job still exists in 5 to 10 years for all aspiring voice actors to have a shot at chasing the stream, and the union is the only sufficiently powerful tool we have to that end. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but if making sure that non-union voice actors can still work is your main concern, you gotta bet on the entity trying to save this art from extinction, not the one with the incentive to replace all actors with AI. Again, I know it's not perfect, but we can't wait for the perfect solution when AI is at the doorstep and already replacing human voice actors. It is significantly easier for actors to fix the imperfections of a labor union, which is beholden to its members and relies on public support, than it is for any one of us to individually dictate the actions of a multi-billion-dollar company. In other words, he says, TLDR, I'm not a huge fan of the union, they are a means to an end. So no matter how weird or counterintuitive some of the contract might be, it's all justified because it's all about AI. And while I understand his viewpoint, it's not really the answer you're looking for when you're already doubting the entire strike and the union behind it. But Coy wasn't the only one trying to rally people back into joining this cause. Another Hoyoverse voice actor by the name of Kyle McCarley posted on the Genshin Impact subreddit a thread by the title, SAG-AFTRA members seeking to clear up some confusion. The only problem is that, again, people were left with more questions than answers. It wasn't a very popular post. The top comment was wondering, why doesn't SAG-AFTRA just come out and make an official statement to clarify things and clear up confusion and misinformation for the general public instead of having voice actors as their mouthpieces and only wink wink nudge nudge at Hoyoverse on Twitter? This is a very good point. Why are voice actors having to do the union's job? Someone else pointed out the contradictory nature of this thread, where one of the bullet points said there is no requirement imposed by SAG-AFTRA for all performers hired on a union project to be union members. Such a requirement would in fact violate US labor law. But then goes on to say, once those 30 days have expired, they become must join. Honestly, at this point, not saying anything would have been better, because every time a voice actor tried to clear up misinformation, they only ended up confusing people even more. People were starting to conclude that this entire strike was nothing more than a Trojan horse, disguised as an AI protection for voice actors, but in reality, only had voice acting monopoly and mafia practices. But we're not even talking about the real issue yet. The real issue is the fact that this strike's weird contradictory nature made people want to look more into SAG-AFTRA as an organization, and what people started finding out wasn't really pretty. Remember the strike in 2023 done by SAG-AFTRA? This was meant to give people working in Hollywood more livable wages and, more importantly, AI protections. Well, it turned out that many people were disappointed with these so-called protections. This article from Prism said this: critics of the deal who spoke to Prism were most concerned about the sections on generative AI, which is used to create synthetic performers or digitally created assets that are not any specific human performer but generated entirely through AI. This is uncharted territory. SAG-AFTRA member, actor, and director Satu Runa in Los Angeles believes the union should have stood against its use, period, rather than trying to work with it. It's very easy to replace us with this technology, she said. We shouldn't normalize it. The protections also include some significant loopholes. For one, for AI involving the participation of human actors, Schedule F performers who make more than $80,000 for a film are exempted, and consent is not required from actors if the photography or soundtrack remains substantially as scripted, performed, and/or recorded. Prior consent given can apply for future features if the producer includes a reasonably specific description of the intended use, language that could be interpreted broadly by producers. So if you make more than $80,000 on a film, those AI protections don't even apply to you, not unless specified, which is counterintuitive. Why did the strike even occur to begin with? And speaking of money, you know what's really interesting? Only 14% of SAG-AFTRA performers make more than $26,470 annually. Remember those wonderful benefits you get for signing up to SAG-AFTRA? One of them being health insurance? Yeah, you could only qualify for it if you make more than $27,540 a year. This means that over 86% of people who paid the $3,000 initiation fee and are part of SAG-AFTRA miss out on one of its most important benefits. Oh, and if I think it's safe to say that most people find Twitter to be humanity's worst invention. I personally think it's ketchup with bananas, but Twitter is definitely a close second. You know what's interesting though? Many people would disagree with me, saying that Twitter was completely fine before Elon Musk decided to buy it for $44 billion. This is a very divisive topic, but here's the great news. One thing everyone can agree on is the fact that Community Notes is probably the best feature to be implemented on this website in the last 10 years. Look, for way too long, some people got way too comfortable spouting nonsense with zero consequences. Like how this person right here claimed that Puerto Ricans are not Americans. And then when Community Notes corrected them for all the world to see, they started losing their minds. But the thing is, if you've seen Community Notes enough, they started losing their minds. But the thing is, if you've seen Community Notes enough times, you know that in certain situations, they take it personal. When someone is so stupid, so ignorant, that even the people running Community Notes lose their patience and become passive aggressive. That's exactly what happened to this VTuber by the name of Gabai. Her ridiculous astronomical level of entitlement and her very damaging claims on someone completely innocent, with her at some point claiming that she's being raped by the VTuber community, made Community Notes have a special rivalry with her, dragging her through the mud in front of everyone to see and making her lose thousands of followers, all her credibility, and any chance at becoming a serious VTuber in the future. Hell, it wasn't just Community Notes that was a part of this. Some of the top talent in VTubing also had to say something about this because it was that damaging. Let's talk about it. Look, if you spend any time online, you know by now, VTubing is a massive industry that only keeps getting bigger. In October of 2024, Ironmouse, a VTuber on Twitch, was able to break a record by reaching over 300,000 Twitch subscribers. Now, naturally, when you start to have such a massive audience following you, there will also be massive demand for merchandise. Merch for VTubers is a huge industry, but it's also not that profitable unless you're one of the biggest ones. It's usually just a way to give back to your fans, and it's done on limited drops. It's very rare to find a VTuber with a permanent, always available merch store. This is why they'll actually rely on fan-made merch to fill that gap. Now I know what you must be thinking, but Mugen, when it comes to the massive VTuber corporations, what about copyright? In the case of Hololive, which is one of, if not the biggest VTuber corporation, they're a Japanese company. What? Isn't Nintendo Japanese too? Aren't they gonna sue me and the 50 generations that will follow after my death for making anything relating to their IP? Well, no actually. In Hololive and many other corporations' terms of service, they actually encourage fan-made creations. As long as you're not producing hundreds of thousands of units of merch in a mass production factory, you should be fine. You don't even have to ask for their permission. It's actually seen as a very good thing and it's very appreciated. You will see some of the biggest VTubers in the industry retweeting, liking, shouting out people who make top tier quality fan merch even though they're not getting a single penny out of it. It's actually a really cool part of the VTubing community. This is something that Gunpei has completely failed to understand. Now, up until this incident, she was considered to be a small VTuber that's never really been in any major controversy. An up-and-coming content creator who was trying to make it big. Trying is the keyword here because she failed miserably. Her entire dreams and aspirations ended in a series of just a few tweets, this one being the first of them. It was made on November 24th, 2024, and here's what she had to say. Hey, please don't allow this person in your VTuber Discord. He goes to VTuber Discord to steal a person's character to make into a plushie. He has profited off Gunpei, and I don't have any association or shared profits with him. She also included a picture of this person's Discord username. She then continues, he's making AliExpress Temu tier plushies of my character, lol. The eyes aren't even correct. Gunpei's eye color is pink, not fucking orange. Again.
Yeah?
Just to profit off other VTubers' characters, linking images of this plushie in question. Then ended this series of tweets by linking this person's Twitter 3 times. Now listen, this had just begun, okay? And people were already so tired of her attitude. Under her tweet of his Twitter profile, people were saying, thanks for the recommendation. Thanks, gave him a follow. You just seem like an all-around bad person. And in the tweet where she included the plushie itself, not a single person was on her side. This is when the community notes started coming into play. Her first post got community noted, and this is what it had to say. This user is falsely accusing LPT Kusa of being a scammer. In reality, Kusa is an indie toy maker from Vietnam known for making handmade custom order plushies. LPT Kusa has explained that the plushie offered on the server were leftovers from a previous commission. If you took a second to look at Kusa's profile, you would see that this checks out. From 2023, he's had a commission sheet where you can see the prices he charges for different plushies. What's really cool is that it's also handmade. It takes 1 to 4 weeks to make. He explains that he was commissioned to make plushies of her, but had 3 that were left over due to some issues or whatever. He joined her server, since it was a plushie made from her appearance, and was wondering if any fans of hers would be interested in receiving one. The poor guy even apologized, saying, I'm sorry for not thinking it through. I only thought people will like to have it. I'm so sorry to Gunpei. I only thought people will like it and don't have to waste all the material. I don't like to see plushie get thrown out. Obviously, Kusa received a lot of support. This dude isn't just some random guy. He's made plushies for many way bigger VTubers. A very well-known VTuber in the community by the name of Bao made sure to back him up, saying, my very first plushie ever was made by you and I still have her on my desk. I received it during a time I thought I would never be successful enough to sell plushies of myself, so I truly cherished it. It would be a different story if you were a company mass-producing plushies, but you are one person handcrafting fan merch based on commissions. I'm sure shipping to customers outside of Vietnam is not cheap either. I hope this is cleared up amicably. You are absolutely not a scammer. Pipkin Pippa, who is also a very well-known VTuber in the community, also made sure to back Kusa up, saying, "You did nothing wrong, dude. I love all the face stuff you make. Some people are just crazy." This is in reference to all the different plushies he's made for her and her friends in her org, Face Connect. So as you can see, Gunpei was not looking good at all. But listen, people make mistakes, right? Even if they're really, really stupid mistakes, they still make them. Apologizing here might have somewhat saved whatever career she might have had, but she doubled down. I mean, why wouldn't she double down? I mean, why would I make a video if she didn't double down? Of course she did. Come on. Gunpei made this tweet saying, "Lol, I'm sorry to those who bought the plushie, but it's kinda your fault. It wasn't even vetted by me and it's poorly made. Like, what were you expecting? Ha 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 ha. I don't even know if you guys got scammed. I'm really sorry. I can't really do anything to help you guys." Then this person tweeted saying, "How about you read the other guy's post he just made and fucking apologize for being a dickhead," referencing the explanation that Kusa had provided as to why he was doing this in the first place. Gunpei quote tweeted this, and here's what she had to say. "I read it, and I said what I said, LMAO. It's really unprofessional still and trashy to just do that in someone's Discord server. Don't promote your shit in someone else's community." So even a very clear-cut explanation couldn't breach her tiny brain. There's no other way to say it. People were just losing hope that they were even talking to a human being. But then she slipped up royally, not only exposing herself, but going on some weird rant about Vietnam, saying it would a story if he mailed me the extra plushies. But no, he's so profit-oriented that he decided to sell knockoffs to people in my community who have no idea when their shit will get shipped. It's like, yeah, because you didn't send me free stuff, you're a piece of shit. It's like, how broke do you have to be? Also, for there to be a knockoff, there has to be an original. Where's the original? It doesn't make any sense. She then continues, "Bro lives in Vietnam. There's no way he's struggling for extra cash in that country with his business." What does that even mean? It's like, yo, bro, I just went to Vietnam. Man, a Big Mac costs $1. What a cheap country. People must be living here like it's a utopia. Dude, have you heard of local salaries, you idiot? Purchasing power, hello? Then she says, "You can sell orange juice with coffee shots for $1 and live off that for a week in that fucking country." So, if digging yourself in a hole was an Olympic sport, she wouldn't get the gold medal, she'd get a platinum trophy. It was ridiculous. This is why the community notes team started reaching its limit. It was time to stop playing games. Gunpei was being called out because her main issue was that she didn't get those plushies for free. It was obvious at this point. So she reiterated, "I didn't even get anything for free." And then the community notes said, Gunpei has received several things for free, actually, linking her Throne.com page, where you can see that not only is she crowdfunding many items right now, but she's received over 331 different items from gifters. I mean, look at this. 331 gifts. Look at these top donators as well. This is like someone's entire Amazon wish list, bro. Like, look at this. She's even asking for chips. Who asks for chips on a Throne.com wish list? That's my first time seeing this. But wait, someone made a plushie of me with their hands because another fan commissioned them? Disgusting if you don't send me one for free at least. Disgusting behavior. How dare you be so greedy? It's insane. She then starts having a public meltdown saying, "I'll always get f***ed over by the VTubing community no matter what. I'll get my design/character ripped for profit while not even getting anything for free. Many such cases." Now, obviously, I have to censor this R word because of YouTube, but if you don't know what it is, it's this fruit without the first letter, okay? And to say something like this is ridiculous, right? To claim something like this in public when so many eyes are on you is crazy. So community notes had to come in and step up their passive aggressiveness. They said, "There is no evidence of rape by anyone related to Gunpei. Gunpei is getting publicity for their racism, reaction to a toy maker, and outrage over not receiving more for free," linking all the previous tweets we've already seen in the video. Then said, "Rape is likely being used to gain post engagement. Rape and criticism are different," citing The Wikipedia article for rape and the Wikipedia article for criticism. Dude, the only reason I still use this website is because of community notes. You know what? Do you find this helpful? Rate it? Yes. Yes. I love it. The level of entitlement is probably the craziest I've seen in recent memory. What an idiot. But she doesn't stop there. It gets even worse. She then tweets out in all caps, "I'm getting raped by the VTuber community. God, please help me." The community notes, again, just copied and pasted the same thing they posted on the last post with both definitions of rape and criticism. Gunpei wasn't just entitled and psychotic at this point, she was also shameless. She was seeing all the engagement she was getting on the initial post, so she decided to quote tweet it and say, "Hi, you can support me by the new Uwu Market merch drop at November 25th at 3 p.m. PST. I do get 20% profits, pretty good. At least I get profits then compared to this fellow where I get absolutely 0%. So Uwu Market is a merch store that collaborates with many VTubers. They make all sorts of merch like plushies, mousepads, etc. In fact, there are so many creators that have collabed with Uwu Market that you have to sort them alphabetically to find the one you want. In Gunpei's case, though, this engagement farming did not work out because if you go to G, you'll see that Gunpei is not there. Uwu Market saw how unhinged one of their future partners was going to be, so they immediately canceled the collaboration. Good riddance. But guys, don't worry, you can still support Gunpei directly even today. She has her own merch store on Creator Spring. So I mean, let's check it out. I'm sure it'll be awesome. Way better than that knockoff plushie she hated, right? You know what? I might even buy something if it's that high quality. I might even actually purchase. I'm sorry, is that a sticker? For 28 euros? That's a sticker. A sticker. That's tiny as hell for 28 euros. Now that's crazy, dude. Like, how shameless can one person be? Oh my god. Now, a content creator by the name of Rev Says Desu made a video talking about Gunpei's fuck-ups. She watched it on her K channel while streaming, and while she did have an opportunity to apologize, yet again, she chose not to, doubling, hell, tripling, quadrupling, I don't even know, quintupling down on the fact that she's not wrong. Watch.
And the plush doesn't even look as good as the Phase Connects one. Like, this one is literally just felt. But the other, fucking plushies other people got are, like, crocheted. It's, like, nice. Like, I feel like the people hating on me didn't even look at the plushie. Like, this plushie is fucked up. It literally has Down syndrome. He half-assed it in the name of profit. Like, he just wanted to make money off me. Like, he does not give a shit about, this guy does not give a shit about me. He just wanted money.
Alright, I think that's enough. No need to torture you with more of her voice. But again, same talking points, that he wanted to only profit when he already did. He already accepted a commission and had 3 left over and didn't want to throw them away. And then she said, well, it wasn't even as good as the other plushies he made for other VTubers. It's like, dude, you should be grateful he even made one for your dumbass. And as you can see, her community, this is an echo chamber, okay? If you go to her Twitter now, you'll see that it is just an endless slew of people contributing to her Throne account, giving her what she wants, okay? These same people will keep throwing money at her, and she's gonna keep doing what she's always done.